Okay, here we go. Yeah, we're close enough on time. Audio sounds good. How's it going, sir? How's it going?
I'm doing good.
All right. Oh boy, here we go. It's episode 77. 77 weeks of doing this show, and
Um,
man, we've basically had you on enough times where we've lost count officially. I think.
I think you're right. I was trying to wonder just now how many times I've been on here, and it's been a few times, I think.
It has, and I'm hoping out there's no echoing on either side because that was a little bit of the delay getting started. But I'm happy to have you here, um, especially for this week's script because there's lots of questions for us to discuss with this week's script, isn't there?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
There's certainly a lot to talk about this time.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. So we've got the thumbs up live saying everything is good, sound is great. So with that being said, let's get started. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me again this week, returning champion, Price of Reason. So happy to have you here this weekend, sir. It's an interesting script today, to say the least.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah, I mean this one was kind of a strange one, and I had to kind of read it, and then I was reading it again, parts of it,
mhm.
because I thought to myself, man, maybe you didn't read it correctly.
I had a couple of those moments, so let's not keep the audience waiting too much. This week we are reviewing a screenplay called Dog, written by Lucy Campbell. It placed 73rd on the 2024 blacklist with 9 votes. Price, please share with us the log line for Dog.
Oh, okay. 1 second. I have to pull this up. I, g- I got it. I got it. Okay. The log line. A family becomes obsessed with finding answers as to who or what killed their beloved dog, only to find a deeper problem in this small town.
All right, the synopsis for Dog is as follows. Lucas and Sophia's new life in a small town is shattered when they return home one night to find their dog gruesomely killed. Was it a wild animal, a neighbor, or a sinister supernatural force from the valley? Desperate for the truth, Lucas embarks on a witch hunt after evidence points to a young local boy, but as they are plagued by further unexplained malevolent events, the family unit unravels with devastating consequences. So, I don't know about you, Price, but when did you start to realize that this script took place in Australia?
Well, it was something that they were talking. There was something. Okay, I know where I noticed. There's a few situations where he says, hey mate," and I
Yeah.
said to myself, one I could let slide, one I could let slide. Then I thought to myself, okay, maybe one of these guys is from Australia and it hasn't really been explained. And then when another guy walked up to another guy and said, "Hey mate," I knew that was it. There's no chance that anywhere like at the beginning I thought it was like somewhere in the country in the U.S., but I'm like nobody's calling each other mate on in the U.S. country. So I
This,
just figured to
yeah.
myself,
This
this is
frequently,
Australia.
because it was a little jarring because we got a lot of talk about going to New York, and
Right.
we're thinking, oh, okay, so yeah, New York's a big city, big important city. So clearly they're probably in some sort of regional area in close proximity to that because they're talking about how big of a deal it is. Um, but I mean, Australia does actually have quite an impressive musical, history, and they have the brilliant theater in Sydney, and they have their symphony orchestras and conservatories. I'm surprised that there was so much put onto this thing about New York because one of Lucas's kids, his oldest kid Ezra, is a cellist, and he's a very accomplished one. And the story kind of starts out a little bit with that in mind because our opening scene is his as a recital with him and a couple of other bandmates that have
Right.
been rehearsing quite well. And while the family is listening to Ezra, there's something in the garden or the backyard of their house that seems to show interest in the family dog Perry, and it's a pretty I mean the descriptive text is actually quite fascinating because it is well written and it creates a vivid picture, and it's got good pacing. But yeah, it's a good mystery setup because we listen to the recital. We assume it's a beautiful thing because we can't actually hear it. And then the family's on the way home, talking about how like, oh yeah, it's a big deal that the son, he's graduating with good grades. He's a savant with the cello. He's got a good future ahead of him. And as they're driving home, which is apparently like a good hour or so outside of town, because they kind of live in like the boonies, so to speak, the headlights on the car goes out, and then they flick back on, and when they do, they see this little kid, like 13-year-old kid on a bicycle in the middle of the road, and the car stops abruptly, and the kid is a little weird, to say the least, right? We're like, what sort of impression did you get when we were introduced to this kid whose name is Oliver, or Ollie?
Um, the Oliver, you mean initially there's something on the road that they see him with his bike, right?
Yeah, because they almost hit him on the car with the car because the headlights on the car just inexplicably go out.
Right.
And when they come back on, there's this kid suddenly in the middle of the road on his bike, just staring coldly, eerily at this approaching vehicle that then stops right at the right at the last second, so to speak, right?
Right. And honestly, that whole Ollie character kind of is a puzzle for me
Mm-hmm.
because it seemed like that they were trying to either create a red herring there or that they were creating something that this is kind of a spooky character. But at the end, I don't really even know what they wanted with that character if you think about it.
Well, he's just kind of like a weird kid, and we also find out that so there's a couple of weird red flags in this first act for me. The first part is that they're
Right.
going to a recital, which is in the evening, and then while they're driving home, it's like past 10 o'clock at night. So I'm wondering, oh, how long is this musical recital? Because I've been to them, and they're usually like an hour, 90 minutes at the most, and they usually start at like 5 or 6 o'clock, and they don't usually go too late. Um, so I was a little bit perplexed by that because again, there's a lot of little context here because apparently like the whole neighborhood, the whole town, was at this recital and all sharing praise on all the musicians, including Lucas's kid Ezra. And then as they're driving back, they're it's just a simple car ride back where I think Lucas is remarking about how their neighbor, who is his name, Tony, who's this big
Tony,
kind
yeah.
of burly guy, kind of intimidates the heck out of them, and he doesn't like the fact that he's got like this giant truck that nobody would need, in this area. And
Right.
as they're doing this conversation, that's when the lights go out and then come back on, and they're abruptly stopped. They abruptly stop so that they don't hit this kid, and we get the first of many of these types of scenes where one character that we're following will walk out of earshot and talk to another character, and we won't hear what they're saying, and there's some sort of interaction going on, and then the character returns and says, "Okay, that's okay, we're moving on." And I wondered what I'm trying to figure out what the intention was of this gimmick because it didn't create more mystery for me because there wasn't enough description
No,
as to the type of interaction that was happening between these two characters, and the first one being between Lucas and this kid Ollie on his bike out in the middle of the night.
honestly, I know what you mean, but I didn't even feel that spooky feeling that he
Hmm.
talked to him and we didn't know what they were talking about. It just kind of the moment came and went. He goes back in his car. I didn't really think much of it. And it's not like something happens later that I think, oh, okay, I get it now. It's
Hmm.
just random stuff happens. I feel like I feel like I don't know if this is a good way to describe it. I feel like this Lucy lady that wrote the script, I don't remember, is it Lucy Chapman? What's her name?
Lucy Campbell.
Campbell. I was close enough. In any case, Lucy Campbell, it feels like she's trolling us throughout most of this movie in a lot of places, and this is just like another troll. And yeah, I mean, it won't be the first or last time in this movie that there seems to be some kind of interesting setup that you're kind of waiting for a payoff and don't really get it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I would say that there's an undertone of like gaslighting going on in this type of script. Um, because a lot of characters are being shown one thing, told another, and this is where a lot of the conflict kind of stirs up, especially because once they return home, of course Lucas is looking under hood to try and figure out why the lights went out. His wife Sophia, is wrangling the kids indoors, and we find out that Chloe is tasked with going to feed the dog. So she has to go get the dog food out of the can, put it into the bowl, and call for the dog who is outside, usually outside in the backyard at this time, to come on in and get some dinner. And the dog never comes. And so the little kid Chloe grabs a flashlight, which the script remarks as a torch, which made me go, okay, Britain or Australian, because it hasn't been confirmed yet at this early stage. And then she heads out. Yeah.
That seemed weird for me, but at that point I was thinking, oh, they're doing, but you're right. I was thinking the same thing. I thought, why would you have some weird torch? And I said, oh, they're doing like this kind of spooky vibe. They want the spooky vibe.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense she'd walk around with a torch, but because of the spooky vibe, that's why they're doing it. That's what I told myself.
But the torch is just a term for flashlight in Australia.
I actually thought
and
she had
Britain.
a torch. I thought that she was lighting a torch. You just explained this to me. I couldn't understand it. I'm like, wow, they're really going this kind of spooky vibe, because it said that she's lighting a torch, and I'm like, wow, like just to
She
look
just
in
has
the
a
forest?
stick with a rag and some alcohol and just decides to strike a match, and there we go. That little 13-year-old.
That's what I thought was
Yeah.
happening. I 100% thought that's what it was. How did you come to the conclusion it was a flashlight?
Well, I have relatives that are from the UK, and they refer to a flashlight as a torch.
I understand. Well, I didn't even know that. I was thinking
it's
that
okay.
she literally. You just now you know what? They would have actually done better off giving her a torch. At least it would have been a bit spooky. Not that it all matters, but you know what I mean. Like
No, I'm now seeing, like, today you learned. Okay, cool. But now I'm also kind of re-envisioning that scene with her with the torch, kind of just waving it around, trying to find something, trying to find the dog, and then when she does find the dog, and it's not. The dog's throat sadly has been sliced open, and it doesn't look like it's accidental. It doesn't look like an animal did it. It looks like it was done with an edged object of sorts. And Chloe is freaking out by this, as any reasonable child should. And we then do a quick cut to the police officer, who he's making a statement, but he's really like. He's treating this as very kind of matter-of-factly, like, oh yeah, a fox or a coyote did this, and of course the dad Lucas is like, no, a fox or an animal couldn't have done that. It was too clean of a cut, like, and of course the cop is like, well, you'd be surprised what goes on here, and I will give props to the writer. Small town cops do behave like this. They try to brush stuff off as quickly as and as easily as possible because they just don't want the headache of having to look into something that, statistically might be nothing, but at the same time, it's still their job to do it. And
yeah, exactly.
Because, I know the small towns, there's lots of gossip and there's lots of talking, and everybody kind of thinks that they know each other, but I've lived in a few over the years, and one thing I know is that everything you think you know is not really the case in a small town. That's why they're so creepy in those horror movies.
This really has that atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? This up until now, I mean, I'm talking to you now kind of in a grumpy way, but when I initially was reading it, this screenplay did have my attention in this early part, because I thought, okay, well, this is kind of interesting. Let's see who did this. How is this happening? So it does. It's like you were saying. It's not poorly written. So at this point, I'm really still in it, trying to think of different ideas of what's going on. I feel that spooky vibe, which is the movie is going for, and all of it seems rather okay until now.
No, I mean, I will say this: it has a compelling mystery, which is what happened to this dog. How did it get this way? What was it? Now we find out that there is a break in their fence because a tree fell down onto it a few weeks earlier, and neither people on either side of the property line have addressed the fence yet. And it's not like it's a grudging thing; it's more like just procrastination, I would say. And and so the cop is really kind of trying to shuffle this away, and we have this one interesting aspect here that kind of threw me off, and that is the police officer called the local veterinarian and said, "Yep, there's a dead dog here. Please come pick it up." And the veterinarian told him, "Yeah, I'll do that first thing in the morning." And I've never known a vet to do that if a dog had been, is found dead outside and it's under mysterious circumstances. If they're able to answer their phone, they usually would go and, take a look at it. And I know this just because when I was a kid, there's a wolf in our town that died in our backyard, and the cops came, and then they called up the local vet, and the local vet was there within 30 minutes, and it was like 11 at night. Of course, that's Canada. So
it could go either way. I mean, on one hand, there aren't a gazillion residents here. So if something like this happened to a dog and there's a local vet, you'd think that this vet would actually come out and do this, like you said. On the other hand, maybe it's such a kind of remote place that getting the guy and having them come there and doing all this thing. And in Australia, I think at like 4 p.m., they're already at the local pub drinking a bunch of beers and stuff. So maybe finding a guy to find a dog then is a late hour. Who knows?
He was sober enough to answer the phone, but he's not sober enough to drive. Because that would actually be an interesting thing to throw here, because there is an escalation of heavy drinking over the course of this script through a few of the characters. So that would have been, I would have liked that. I would have appreciated it. But I was looking at it more of a sense of it's a point of urgency, right? Because urgency gets audiences a little bit more invested a lot quickly into your script, because you're increasing the intensity. So in this case here, the cop showed up and says, "Okay, there's a dead dog. It's tragic. We're just going to leave it outside for other critters and insects to start picking away at this body and make it virtually impossible to properly determine the cause of death, or to see the type of injury that was inflicted upon it and determine how it happened." Because if it was a bladed object, or if it was another animal, you'd be able to determine that, getting the creature as quickly as possible. But when you're leaving it for, say, 8 to 10 hours in the backyard, birds are going to go after that. Other coyotes or other animals might sniff it out and then do something to it, in which case you're just making it harder and harder to discover what happened to the dog. And I was thought that's kind of weird.
That dog. They could have just buried the dog, to be honest with you. Just do a thing in the ground and put him in there, unless they were looking for like an autopsy. But I agree with you. Just leaving the dog out there until the next day doesn't seem plausible. The sheriff or whatever he was supposed to be, he could have, I guess, suggested that they take some nylon bags of sorts and
cover it up.
At least,
tarp over there or something.
Right, do something that at least conceals this dog's presence. It does seem a bit odd, but trust me, there's so many things going on in this script that are bigger, like strange oddities, that this is really like small potatoes. If everything was great about this script, this would not be a major issue for me. I just accept it.
Yeah, I will say this: it feels like a little bit of a contrived sense of morbidity because like the kid Chloe, she could stare out her window into the backyard and see the dead dog like right there, right in front of her. Like that's kind of twisted. But this Chloe kid is also like, she's very insecure because she has to go, like she sleeps in the same bed with her older brother out of fear. And now her older brother's 17 and she's 13. And they're also not related because
This
Ezra,
this jumped out at me. This jumped out at
yeah,
me. I didn't realize that at the beginning, but once they it became clear that they're actually not related by blood and they're sleeping in the same bed,
yeah,
that is a bit awkward. It's something that, it's difficult to address this in a script, I guess, but I don't know what to tell you. Like 13 and 17-year-old like stepbrother and stepsister. There's naughty websites that have a lot of videos with that exact theme, if you know what I'm saying. Not so I've heard.
yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things I did appreciate with the script is that it never crossed that type of line where you thought something was going to go on.
No, you didn't. But I just think that if you're not really related and you're kind of 13 and 17, it seems like a bad idea.
Yeah,
It's not one necessarily that it would completely topple the script, but when you kind of figure out what's going on and that the age difference between them and that they're not really related, you do kind of think about that for a second. I don't know. I don't think it's intentional.
hmm.
I don't know what it says about you and I that we both thought this,
Well,
but
I just thought it. Well, I mean, e- even regardless if they were related or not, I still thought it was kind of odd that a 13-year-old would want to snuggle
yes,
up for as
yes,
a security blanket with the big brother in that way. And then later
awkward.
on, the Chloe does the same thing, wanting to sleep with the parents. Like, can I just spend the night with you guys because I'm gonna have nightmares? And of course, the parents say no. You can't do that.
And they're like, you're too old for this. But honestly, if a child is, let's say, 7 is asking that, you're like 8, you're saying, oh, you're a bit too old for this. Once a child is already 13, like in her teens,
Yeah.
that kind of seems like an old age to run to the parents and want to sleep in their bed.
Yep.
It sounds like a strange age to sleep with your stepbrother. A lot of odd things going on there. But I don't know. Maybe. I don't know what it says about us that we were thinking all these weird things, but it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. I agree with you.
I mean, I understood the whole like, oh, I'm scared. I saw their dead dog, best friend. Can I just like hang out with you tonight and like it'd make more sense if he was just like, okay, I'll lie with you until you fall asleep in bed, and then I'm going to my own bed, and that type of thing. That makes a bit more sense. But this was the whole like, no, no, just I'll be here. I'll make sure you don't get any nightmares. Okay, sweet and endearing. But then we find out much later in the script that yeah, Ezra is Lucas's son, Chloe is Sophie's daughter, and it looks like the Sophie and Lucas got married. I guess when Chloe was like 2 or 3 years old, um, because we do get a shot described for us of a wedding photo where Chloe and Ezra are significantly younger in the photo with Lucas and Sophia in their wedding, threads. So it's kind of so I mean, there's a lot of stuff that were hinted at what doing, but nothing really directly kind of in that relationship area. But I also thought it was kind of odd to have this dynamic because it doesn't really quite factor in throughout the rest of the script. Like the fact that they're a couple that have been married for several years. They each have like a Brady Bunch situation. They each have a kid of their own together in this family. It just kind of didn't seem relevant to even bring it in there because I don't think this story would change in any way if really significantly in any way if it was just a traditional family unit, from beginning to end type of thing.
Well, I'll tell you what. If this screenplay actually wanted to play with this idea, uh, one of the ideas throughout the screenplay, and I guess I won't spoil the ending because people still may read it and all that stuff. But I think that you're supposed to be suspicious of different characters, that maybe there's more than meets the eye with them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they wanted to add some level of suspicion to, let's say, the daughter, this could have been an interesting way to do it. The thing is that because we know how this story plays out, I do feel like once you watch this movie, it really isn't relevant. It's like you said, it could have been anything. There isn't a specific reason that you watch this movie and you're like, okay, I get it. It really matters that they're not the traditional family unit, but like the Brady Bunch, a mini Brady Bunch situation.
Yeah,
It doesn't make a difference at the end of the day.
it doesn't make a difference. And what further solidifies that is we know where all of the main characters of the family were during the time the dog was killed. So there's no reason to suspect any of them anyways. Like even on the dramatic irony level of things, we, the audience, know exactly that they're fine. It's some of the characters within the family that are having a distrust with each other, but they're also having a huge distrust with the rest of the neighborhood. So we find out that they live in this kind of like development neighborhood. Like it's a building neighborhood. There's this guy named Dale who's overseeing all the construction of the new homes everywhere. They're still pretty decently far apart, so everybody's got a large plot of land with their house, but things are kind of being built up. And as they're driving out, they run into Dale and they're like, "Hey, is there any chance, like, there's a CCTV recording of the street by our place because our dog Perry has died and we want to find out what happened to him." And of course, Dale is pretty taken aback by this because he's not expecting to hear that a resident in his neighborhood has lost a pet. And he's like, "Yeah, sure thing. I'll go check the CCTV. I'll give you a call with what I have, and I'll let the cops know about it right away." And we find out that Lucas is a guidance counselor at a high school, and Sophia is a professor at a rural university. I'm not sure exactly what the subject is, but I think it has to do with like psychology. It's a little tricky. There's this aside in the scene where Sophia is going over one of her lessons, and one of the lessons is talking about obsession and how obsession can lead to self-destructive behavior, and she decides to cite good old Wile E. Coyote of Merry Melodies and Looney Tunes as an example. But then this is where the biggest red flag came in for this first act, and that is the writer forgets why Wile E. Coyote is after the Roadrunner. They're making an argument that even the coyote forgets why he's after the Roadrunner. He just wants to get him. But if you watched every episode of those cartoons, it's a very clear answer. He wants him because he wants to eat him. It's just, he's hungry. I mean, he can get food from Acme and everything, but it's not about the food. It's about the pursuit and the fact that you can't order Roadrunner from Acme Industries.
Right.
Like that's the reason. It's the innate nature of the animal, seeking a prey, and a prey that is too wily smart and to be caught by a person like Wile E. Coyote. And so when I realized that the writer was drawing a parallel to a subject that they hadn't fully researched in, and even when they're citing other psychologists that would try to reinforce that belief, you got to go back to the basic the basic motivation from the start, which is that the whole reason that Wile E. Coyote is hunting the Roadrunner is because he wants to make a really delicious meal. And he spends money with which we have no idea how he has money, but he's able to order all these things from Acme in order to capture this Roadrunner, and fails every time, and that's the gimmick. And I think what Lucy Campbell here is trying to do is trying to create a parallel about how sometimes people can have motivations at first that then morph into something that is unfamiliar to their initial actions, and then they've created a habit of just doing that action because they've rewired themselves into doing so. And I don't think she effectively set that up in this lecture that she had Sophia share with us in the script. And that was my first faulting. It's like, okay, I think the writer might be writing something on a psychological level that's a little bit outside of their weight class at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. And then sorry, but like, try not to sort of spoil this too early, but for the first act, it's really it's all setting up the chess pieces of sorts. We've got Lucas, we got Sophia, we got Chloe, we got Ezra. They're the MacArthur family. They have their next door neighbor, Tony. We find out from Lucas that while he's a guidance counselor in the office, which, I mean, I think they got that right. He just sits at his desk, playing solitaire or something, because what else does
he's always eating sushi?
He's always eating sushi too.
I wanted to ask you something though.
Yeah.
It's very rare, but when I read the screenplay, I almost was thinking to myself, when is the first act over? What was really the inciting incident? Is the dog? What really happened here to make me feel like I was shifting gears or like something was actually happening? I mean, the dog happened pretty early on.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's enough to consider that, because maybe they were sort of just living their life. There was a recital and everything was great, and then there was the dog thing. That's where he's starting to look into this town. You start thinking, oh, maybe spooky stuff is happening here.
Hmm.
Maybe him going over to Tony's, but that already feels like that was in the middle of the second act.
It's more repetitive because your inciting incident is definitely the murder of the dog or the death of the dog. What's the cause of death for the dog? And then they elevate the stakes in a very frustrating way, but deliberately so, because Lucas calls the police officer that's investigating, and he's like, "Hey, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You told me in the morning that you'd have some information from like the CCTV footage or what the veterinarian found about the dog." And what we get from the cop is like, "Yeah, there's some other things on more priority," and he lists all these other crimes, which you don't get the sense that this would actually be a thing in the small town, given how small it is.
Right.
And so this goes into a nod of something that I'm like, I completely recognize this. Like, yep, the cop is he wishes he was in Mayberry and he just doesn't want to do his job when something real happens. So we have that frustration.
I could see a cop acting that way, so that didn't seem out of the ordinary to me.
Right.
I mean, I wondered to myself what kind of high priority he has, but at the same time, I didn't know how many people he has to serve or what he has to do. At the end of the day, if this sheriff guy looked and it looked like some dog that ran into some fox or something, maybe he just doesn't feel like doing anything. The weird thing is that the sheriff on one hand was spooky. He's like, oh, well, do strange things do happen here, don't they? And at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, he's like, well, they'll be tomorrow. No, I'll be here. No, the vet will come here tomorrow. I'll call you in the morning. It's like he's just all over the place.
Yeah.
It would have been easier if after this thing you see him go to the bar and drink beers with a vet. I'd be like, these guys don't care about anything. They just want to drink. At
See,
least something, but this wishy-washy behavior from the officer,
mhm.
it's either he's lazy and doesn't like to do anything and at least show us that that's his character, or something else, but they kind of tried to show us two angles. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain what I'm saying.
No, it's basically trying to show two different perspectives at the same time. They're trying to outline from the cop's perspective that, there's this a dead dog is really low on my priority list, but at the same time we're getting the frustration from the dad because he wants to find out, and we as an audience want to find out what happened to this dog. And the one person that's in town responsible for investigating that is basically saying it's no big deal. And you brought up an idea that would have been absolutely good for conflict, which is what happens if Lucas went to a pub. Maybe he's going to pick out some takeout, and he sees the cop and the vet there just having beers, having a laugh in the evening while he's perturbed over the mystery of his dead dog. I mean, that's a good scene because there's ripe for conflict, right? He gets a shot. He either gets the opportunity to call them out, or you create an awkward situation that shows the type of character that Lucas is, where he likes to avoid conflict, even when at the expense of his own curiosity, of justice for his own situation. But we didn't get any of that. Instead, we we kind of pivot to this Oliver kid who is known as the freak in school. He's silent pretty much for the entire script except for one scene.
Right.
And every time somebody in the family kind of mentions how weird Oliver is, Chloe's the first one to say he's not weird. He's just, himself. And clearly it was very obvious to myself, but apparently not obvious to the rest of the people in the family, that Chloe actually is like friends with Oliver or with Ollie.
It was obvious to me too, but again, it's one of those things that they planted. This is a rare thing that they planted and actually paid off, but the payoff was dumb.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't disagree with you there. We get a bunch of characters that are carefully designed to be a good distraction because we want to have this mystery. We want to be following down various threads to see where they take us. And we have, of course, Tony, the next door neighbor, he swings by with his very pregnant wife, who's like half his age, and he talks about how, like, oh, we've been wanting to have you over for dinner. It's tragic to hear the news about your dog. I'd hate that if something happened to my dog. And he's got a dog as well. I think his name's Rocco, and and so, like, Ezra doesn't want to actually go over to dinner, but of course Sophia's like, no, we'll go over. We'll get to know our neighbors, and so now we have this distraction, this other scene that's I think the writer is trying to set this up so that the reader is going to think, oh, maybe Tony and his family are the reason why the dog is dead because they share the property line. There's the hole in the fence, that type of thing. But it ends up just being a basic type of scene between two guys kind of bonding over alcohol while the women are kind of bonding over the fact that one of them is going to be a new mom for the first time. And the kids, well, they're just there to eat and kind of be window dressing because they have no purpose in the scene. But in this case here, it's really just Lucas kind of no longer being intimidated by Tony and them kind of getting along because they're both outraged that, you know, the dog has died. And Tony starts talking a little bit about how, you know, this entire town and this entire rural area, there's something evil about it and you got to protect your family. And that's why he's got a whole bunch of guns. And we later find out that he's got this underground home that has enough supplies for a family for like 10 years. And so he's a very obsessive prepper.
And he's a religious man.
And he's a deeply religious man as well. And this kind of gives foundation for Lucas because when he goes to see Dale, who has taken a look at the CCTV footage, and we find out that Ollie actually went into their backyard, their garden, the night the dog passed away, and they see him go in, and then they see him run out and get on his bike, and he goes down the road, and that's where he kind of intercepts Lucas and the family in that car from that earlier scene. So he was there, and of course Lucas, the dad, is thinking, okay, this weird kid that's called a freak at school probably did something to my dog, and his next door neighbor Tony, when he learns of this, is like, you know what, that weird kid is weird. He's always been weird. His mom's from the city. And and they came out here, and as soon as they came out here, all these other weird things started happening, and I think it's that kid. And the rest of that town sadly agrees. They think this weird Ollie kid is up to no good. And of course, Chloe's still adamantly defending him, saying, you know, he's not weird. And this is a rabbit hole that Lucas kind of falls into where he can't help but keep an eye out for Ollie. And of course, you know, he gets the police on him, and then the cop goes and interviews Ollie, and you get this little story that Ollie had been sneaking over every time that family leaves home to go play with the dog in the backyard because he liked the dog. And that's creepy. You know, trespassing and all that stuff. And I don't know if you believe this story or not. I thought, okay, it's a decent thing for ambiguity, but apparently, according to the police officer, the kid, when he saw that the dog was dead, he immediately ran away, and instead of telling the authorities, he just went home.
Oliver was the typical red herring weirdo kid.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen a lot of movies and stuff where you see this guy and you think, oh, they're seemingly setting it up that he's the bad guy or there's something wrong with him, but at the end, either he's even a good guy, he surprises you. Think of Stranger Things. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There was like Jonathan, he's like a weirdo, almost borderline like stalker, or whatever you want to call him. He's taking weird photos. At the end, he's actually, presented as a decent guy. So I think that this seemed like they were going with that trope.
Yeah.
Or at least it was a possibility. But like I said to you, and you've heard it until now, and I'm trying to keep myself, because there's so many instances of this. This movie does a lot of setups, a lot of really decent setups that are decently written. Like you said, there's decent pacing. Mm-hmm. There's some mysteries here. But every time that they don't quite pay them off, it just disappoints me a little more. And as I was getting more and more through the script, it's kind of a downer how so many things are set up, but so many these things, they don't really justify their existence at the end, if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't make much sense because one of the things that's set up early on when we meet Tony is Ida, his wife that's half his age, is very pregnant, and the script keeps conveying to us that she's very terrified being in in a relationship with Tony, and then we also find out that the land they're living on is actually in Ida's family, and Tony is just married into it. And I was getting the weird. I was thinking like there's something cultish going on with Tony and Ida, like because there's such a big age difference. She's always uncomfortable. He knows a lot about this land, this neighborhood, and what's going on here, but it's not his family's land. It's her family's land. So I'm wondering more about. I'm curious more about that relationship and how that works because Ida's pretty quiet. She has this look about her where she wears a smile, but there's fear in her eyes all the time. And sadly, the script never delivers on that.
Such a disappointment. By the way, she's his second wife, I assume, because he has the other kid, right?
No. Ida is and Tony are the next door neighbors because they don't have any
don't the next door neighbors have a kid?
Nope, they don't have a kid.
Who's the one that goes hunting with what's his face?
Oh, that's Joel. That's Joel. That's a classmate of Ezra's.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why did I think that he had something to do with all of this? Didn't he? There was something with the father. Oh, you need to go hunting, and then he's like, oh,
Oh
whatever.
yeah. So that's on their second. That's the second time we have Tony and Lucas together. Because they're talking about hunting, and even Ida talks about how she's hunted before. And
right, that I remember.
And we've got Sophia and, of course, Lucas talking about, like, oh, they don't believe in hunting. They don't like the idea of being the ones that kill the animals. They're happy to eat animals, but they're not going to do the killing. And, of course, Tony makes an argument that, hey, it's a useful skill. And then Lucas, as he's starting to warm up to Tony, he's like, you know what? Yeah, let's do that. He makes a joke about like how he killed a bird once when he was younger, and of course, his wife Sophia was mocking him on that because he's not that type of guy, and he's trying to like put on this persona that he is. And it was an interesting kind of scene. It felt very much of like a dry comedy, and from there, he basically says to his kid Ezra, he's like, you know what, you and your buddy Joel, whatever his name is, I think it's Joel. Yeah, you've got my permission to go hunting.
Okay, I get you now. I for some reason I thought that he was the son of the other guy, but I agree with you. That's how it goes down, and then they go to the hunting, which is another dumb thing. But yeah, go on.
Well, this one is there's so many things weird about the hunting scene with Ezra and Joel. So the first part is like, okay, so Joel is like walking Ezra through all the hunting stuff. Like, this is how you hold the rifle. This is where you got to aim. This is when you should, squeeze the trigger. And they're hunting kangaroo. And Ezra manages to land a pretty much a fatal shot on the kangaroo. And it freaks him out a little bit because he's never killed anything before. But the kangaroo is down, but it's still struggling to live. And then that's when Joel comes in with his hunting knife and he just slits the throat of the kangaroo, which is done deliberately to kind of showcase the struggle of the dog, because the dog had its throat cut horrifically. And then when the kangaroo is done, what does Joel do? Well, he hands the hunting knife to Ezra and he's like, I'm going to walk you through skinning the animal and filleting all the meat. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, this guy's a cellist. He shouldn't be handling a hunting knife right now. What if he cuts his finger or something? And lo and behold, that's pretty much what happens. As he's filleting the kangaroo, there's something in the brush behind them, and it startles Ezra, and he drops his knife, and he ends up slicing off his index finger on his left hand. And
that whole thing was weird. That whole thing was just so freaking weird, but okay.
It was very. Yeah. It felt very much like indie films, like really like hyper low budget, like true shoestring budget, like $5,000 feature indie films, where you have a simple conflict you can do in camera that has larger repercussions within the rest of the story. But in this case here, you have Ezra slices his index finger off. Joel is panicking, and then he basically gets like a sweatshirt and puts it around Ezra's fist to try and stop the bleeding. And of course, Ezra doesn't want to leave without finding his finger, but they're in an area where they can't find the finger, and Ezra's losing a lot of blood. So Joel is just getting him to the hospital, and then we cut to the hospital where the family's all there. Ezra's gotten stitched up. His Lucas, as the father, doesn't blame Joel for the accident. And Joel just wishes that he could have done more, that maybe he was a bit more attentive or what have you. But Lucas, being the guidance counselor and also trying to be like, the passive, reliable father figure, just thanks Joel for getting his kid to the hospital in time so that he didn't bleed out and die. And Joel is then quickly excused. And right as the drugs, the painkillers start working on Ezra, he realizes that his entire music career is done. Because how is he going to play the cello when his dominant cello hand is one finger shy of a set? And all of his future in New York and everything in music, it's all gone. And and this bothers Lucas a lot, to the point where he even goes with Tony out to the field where the incident happened, trying to find the finger. And even Tony's saying, like, it's doubtful you're going to find it after this many hours. And on top of that, it can't even be sewn back on. And when they actually do find the finger, because Crow has nearly died choking on some of the meat from the bone, and you're like, ooh, that is gruesome, and really that does put a nail in that coffin. A period on that sentence with regards to the finger. And now we have this now parallel story that has of Ezra and his future, that has now taken over the conversation as to what happened with the dog. Because now we're no longer looking to find out about the dog anymore. Now we're trying to figure out, okay, so what's Ezra's future at this point? And also, how is it Ezra losing his finger, the family losing their dog, Lucas is spending more time with Tony, and he's drinking a lot more. And so there's this self-destructive behavior that's happening within the family, and Sophia can't do anything about it. Chloe can't do anything about it. And it gets even worse when they're all woken up in the middle of the night because one of the new buildings in the development has caught on fire down the road. And everybody's kind of freaking out on this, and all eyes are pointed to Ollie, who is staring at the fire like completely emotionless. And then he looks around and he locks eyes with Lucas, and then stares at him like that little girl in the meme, who's looking back at us after seeing like the building in the background on fire, like with that mischievous type of grin, but that cold eyes. Like, we're getting that parallel shot here, where the writer's making a lot of effort to make us believe that Ollie is like this generation's Omen of sorts.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a strange thing going on here. I don't really know what to say, but
well, does it feel to you more like it's vignettes that are thinly tied together as opposed to like a cohesive story?
I'll tell you what. There's a few. I've been thinking about this. There's a few different possibilities here. Either it's a writer that watched a lot of different spooky movies and thought, hey, that's kind of cool, that's kind of cool. Why don't I just try to throw all of them into this screenplay, tease this and tease that, and then at the end, this writer didn't quite even know how to bring all of these things home. Mm-hmm. In a way, it's sort of like I hate to use this example, but it's almost like the J.J. Abrams style of writing. A bunch of mystery boxes, like all across the board, never-ending mysteries, and the movie just doesn't deliver on anything at the end of the day. It sets up a lot of stuff, but there's no payoff. And that's exactly what J.J. Abrams is, in my opinion. Like, Mr. Setup with no payoff.
Right.
That's what I feel about this movie. I will say that up until the part that I started seeing that these resolutions are weird or there's a lot of stuff that just doesn't make sense to me. I was still with it. I was still giving the movie a chance. Until the very end, I thought, man, maybe there's a way that this writer is really going to impress me and tie all of these loose ends together and really wow me, that all of this makes sense somehow. But then I think I can say this now, that the second I finished reading the screenplay, I actually asked you, I said, I don't know if I understood the screenplay.
Yeah. No.
Because it kind of just left me hanging. You know what I mean? It feels like a combination between J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson likes to do this kind of stuff and then give you a middle finger. You know what I mean? That's like his style. Whereas J.J. Abrams just like he doesn't have the know-how and capacity to actually stick the landing on whatever mysterious ideas he's had. So this movie feels like it was written by J.J. Abrams in collaboration with Rian Johnson.
No, I mean, yeah, I would say that there's some strong parallels to that. I will argue that, I mean, I do think character development in this script is better than a typical J.J. Abrams script, because J.J. Abrams, he's the type of guy with his mystery box. It's like, if you've ever experimented with, say, recreational pharmaceuticals like marijuana, and you're talking to that one person that starts a conversation and then completely forgets what they're talking about and is hoping that you chime in so that he doesn't have to try and finish the story that he was saying, that's J.J. Abrams. Like, he'll start out with something cool that might sound profound, and then he completely loses it, and we're all left basically wondering what the heck just happened. You just wasted our time now. And then Rian Johnson's the type of guy who would be in that circle that would pose a question deliberately to kind of mess up and ruin your buzz. And you've got two of those types of perspectives. I can't tell if it's deliberate or if they were trying to go around something else in the story that just didn't land, and that's why I got the sense of this, because we keep on getting, like, the escalation doesn't follow the chain of events in the way that you would expect them to. It's like, okay, we have a dog that has passed away. Now we've got a house that's been burnt on fire. They don't feel very connected, aside from the fact that we have this Oliver kid here. So he's supposed to be the thread, but we're waiting for that one extra beat that either makes that has to convince us that he's this threat in the story, before they reveal that extra information where, oh, it's not really him, it's someone else, if that was the case. And that never came. Like, you, in a good mystery, you kind of want to have a bunch of evidence steer you into one direction, but that's all just a distraction, because there's that one more piece of evidence that comes up in your story where you can completely realize why you were led down this one path, but because that one piece, everything else just works better with this other character that has been around the entire time but was never given the focus as a possible suspect until that twist and turn. And that's the mark of, like, a fun mystery at hand, is where you bait and switch the audience, but you don't ruin the experience because of that, because what you have provided with the switch answers more questions than the bait that you had beforehand. Like, that's how you make that satisfying turn. Otherwise, you then actually would be subverting expectation, which is demoralizing the actual efforts of the story at hand. Where the way that you want to go is you want to surprise. You want the audience to go, oh, makes way more sense. That's huge. That's amazing. Oh, it all fits together. Yes, go get this guy. Go solve this mystery. You want that excitement there. You don't want something out of left field. And to the writer's credit, some of the setups that she puts in here makes you think that she has that as a resolution. But, without spoiling the details.
I'll give you one thing, and I agree with you. I think this writer is better than J.J. Abrams in the sense that there were interesting setups. There were characters that were interesting. I liked certain ideas here. The neighbor that he had at the beginning he doesn't like, but he gradually, as he becomes more paranoid, he befriends. That itself could have been an interesting idea. You know what I mean? That focusing on this idea with the neighbors and the influence, and then discovering that he's not, something's wrong with him and his wife, and maybe revealing a bigger mystery and something more interesting about it, and something even mystical. Whatever it is, that would have been cool. But instead, it's just like it kind of touches upon it and teases that something will happen, but then nothing really happens with it. It could have been good. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it could have been good because stories like this, when you have all these setups, we are biologically conditioned to think that all these setups are actually going to form a whole puzzle at the end. And frankly, like life doesn't always work that way. But just because life doesn't always work that day doesn't mean your stories also have to work that way. That's the reason why stories kind of stand the test of time, is that they do provide context, answers, and satisfaction with the premise towards the end, because we can learn something from that. We can share details from that. It helps us it helps us reorient ourselves within our own lives when we have all this chaos around us. And in this case here, it felt like chaos first, and the resolution was to accept the chaos, to find tranquility, which is executed in a very abstract way. And it doesn't help that when we do finally get our third sort of instance with Ollie, it doesn't have a payoff at all, because Ollie gets into a fight at school because bullies are picking on him. Lucas witnesses the fight, and he doesn't do anything until his daughter Chloe screams out, "Hey, Dad, come stop this," because she's helpless to stop the fight. And Ollie is getting punched in the face, and he's not even reacting from it. It's like he almost likes getting punched in the face, or he's just very stoic about it. And his nose is broken. And of course, Lucas, like all attentive teachers, tosses the bully aside and then puts the kid that got beat up into detention of sorts, because that's how it worked back in the day. And this is where we get our first lines from Oliver, where he's in the office and he's basically being told by Lucas, like, "What's your deal? Why are you such, a weird kid? Like, you do realize people are bullying you because of your behavior." And Ollie, of course, he's being very defensive. He says, "I liked your dog a lot. I liked playing with him. I didn't break into your house. I just trespassed in your garden." And Lucas is trying to convey to him how that's still a bad thing to do, and Ollie is just completely unfazed by it. And then, of course, Lucas is like, "Stay away from my daughter." And Ollie is very defiant. He's like, "No," and he tells him to F off, and we get some.
But you know what?
Character out of
Here
him.
is a strange plot hole, sort of a bit of a plot hole.
Sure.
If you're Ollie, you can say, "Hey, you're not strangers to me. You know what I mean? I'm friends with your daughter. I wasn't busting into your house. You know what I'm saying? The dog is there. I pet him. I'm friends with your daughter." So that would put it at least in a less creepy context, but he doesn't even bother saying that.
It would be better if he said that.
All matters at the end.
I mean, it'd be better if he said, "Chloe said I could come over anytime to play with the dog," which also seems a little bit too juvenile for a 13-year-old kid. Because again, this is like the cusp of like the dawn of hormones for children, or teenagers. Once you hit 13, once you're able to get into like high school or secondary school, that's where things get more intense. And doing something innocent like playing with a dog is a little bit below that age range. So yeah, that was also kind of a little bit off. But what's fascinating about this is like Ollie just kind of picks up and leaves school, and Sophia is going to she heads over to the gardening store because she wants to like plant a garden and achieve something there, because she has no green thumb. Everything she plants immediately starts to die. And while she's there, she sees Ollie and his mom, kind of just helpless in the parking lot. And the mom, Ollie's mother, is like screaming obscenities to the air because someone has slashed her tires on her car while she'd been inside grocery shopping. And Sophia finds this as horrible and offers to give them a ride home. But the mother scoffs at the idea because she's well aware, because I guess Ollie told her, that Lucas kind of bullies her kid in school. And this bothers Sophia a lot. And yeah, and I'm saying "and" a lot because there's not a whole lot of byproduct from the cause and effect in this script. Like, things just keep kind of happening, and there's not much of a fallout or a build-up as a result of it. Because as we keep... yeah.
Either Lucy Campbell is just a giant troll, and that's the vibe of this whole screenplay, or Lucy Campbell doesn't know how to wrap things up and really tie things together. I want to believe, I prefer for her sake that she's a giant troll. The thing is, though, what do you really benefit from giant troll? Yes, I mean, I've studied film, and they show you these kind of like French movies that were made in the 60s and things like that. I don't know if it's Breathless or whatever it is, where there's strange jump cuts, and sometimes you watch, these type of more abstract movies that are kind of messing with your mind and don't make even any sense, or watching some surreal thing like Un Chien Andalou and things like that. But at the same time, this doesn't fall into that category. This is sort of building up as a legitimate, spooky type of movie with a mystery. And as such, it doesn't make sense that at the end, all these things are kind of in the air or are not followed through. All these setups get either very mild, unsatisfying payoffs or no payoffs at all. Sometimes there's just a bunch of setups and nothing happens with it. You're like, wait, what happened with that? And then you just forget about it because nobody did anything with it.
Yeah, I describe it like going to a circus and seeing 4 clowns walk up on stage, each with a single ball, and they just kind of toss it up and down as if they're about to juggle with each other, but they never do. Like, they're just standing there shoulder to shoulder, throwing a ball up and down, and you're expecting one to have, like, throw it to the left or to the right so that they'd be juggling with each other, but they never do. It's just, they're very isolated stuff. The only thing that's similar to all of them is that they're all dressed in clown makeup. That's how I would say some of these plot threads in the script kind of function. Is they're there, but they just don't interact as tightly as they need to.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, because, the big turning point of this script starts with Lucas getting drunk every day, and then all of a sudden Ollie's goes missing. And now there's a search party starting for Ollie, which this is very weird because you would think if this town, so far this town has been presented as not trusting the kid, and now they're rallying together to go find him, where I would expect that you would have the authorities looking for him, like police and fire, and then maybe church volunteers, and then you'd have on the opposite side of things the town kind of saying, good, that little demon child is gone. Because we do know from an earlier scene that they actually don't really have much courtesy to hide some of their emotions. Even when Tony was calling out the police chief for being a coward and a poor protector, just like his old man was. And other people kind of agreed with him for that. So when we find out that Ollie is missing, and the rest of the town is searching for him, and Chloe wants to join the search, it's I felt like this was kind of a betrayal of what we had, or they didn't do, or Lucy didn't do enough of a setup to say, like, maybe they believe that he's a weird kid, but he's still a kid, and we should, be humane and look for him. We didn't get that type of sense when this plot thread was presented.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I see. There's a comment from Deadman.
Oh yeah. We'll get to that shortly towards the end. But
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I wanted to bring it to your attention, but let's go on.
I've got that. I'm on that ball. No worries, sir. But during this new plot thread that has now dominated the narrative, we find out that Chloe really wants to find Ollie because she feels guilty, because she is the one that actually caused the fire of that building development in town. And the reason that she did that is because she wants her mom and the family to go back to Sydney where they were before, because she doesn't like where they are anymore.
That felt really out of left field for me. That was just
Me
like,
too.
I did it. And then once she said it, like, nobody even cares about that either. It's another one of those things that, like I said, there's two situations. One, there's a setup with no payoff. One, there's a setup with a very unsatisfying payoff. Or it starts the ball rolling on another sort of thread of a plot or some kind of narrative idea, but then it just goes away and you never hear about it again. So This at least they tried to resolve some mystery. It's one of the only mysteries that's resolved in the entire movie. But once you get it, it doesn't even matter. Nobody ever mentions it again.
No, but the other part too is the contradiction is that she burnt down a house because she wants to leave town, but she likes Ollie, so she'd be leaving her best friend. I don't get the logic in that, even for a child. Like it it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't.
And I mean that's like this does have it's a weird script because there's a lot of like obsession stuff. Like Ezra, he is all in the background. He is just depressed. He's never changing out of his pajamas. He can't cut his food. There's this one point where he goes back to school and sees that he's been replaced in the band, which obviously he would be. They still have a scheduled set of performances. And he feels like he just has no future anymore. And we get this other new thread where we find out a little bit more on the relationships, which is the reason Ezra got into music is because after his mother passed away when he was like a toddler, that's the only thing that could kind of bring life back into his world. And Lucas is devastated by this because now he's seeing his son in that same position he was in shortly after his mother passed away. And
Right.
And instead of Lucas doing something to try and help him, Lucas just goes to Tony's all the time and drinks.
And the more I think about it, that wasn't built either. I mean, you can't just have so many story ideas that you want, but really not really take the time to develop them a bit more. I like the idea. There was one thing that I thought was interesting, that at the beginning he didn't want to pray with a guy, and he was religious in his past, but now the guy was bringing him back, and they're like both praying together, and he's taking it more seriously, and it showed that some time has passed. I thought that was an interesting idea, but again, for me, that was a thread that I would have wanted to see more of. The father changing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Call it Jack Nicholson in Shining or whatever you want to call it. He starts off that he's like, he cares about the family. He's acting like a regular father. The more time he spends with this guy who's supposedly bad news, the more he becomes weird. I don't dislike the idea. That might have been one of my favorite ideas in the movie. I just feel like at the end, they tease it, but they don't deliver. They don't deliver anything. I'm just frustrated. That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
No, it's I don't disagree with that. It is a frustrating aspect because nothing sticks the way you're expecting it to. And I mean, it's hard for me to distinguish, is this a troll job or is it just a writer with a bunch of ideas that hasn't fully learned how to mesh them well enough together, excuse me, to give us that story that really hits. And where we are with Ollie missing and the search party going out and Ezra's depression, this is kind of like where we have to cut off for spoilers, because what happens next is significant spoilers, but we can sort of talk a little bit around some of it and basically say that the ending is dark but light at the same. It's a light veneer of a dark ending, I'll put it that way. And it doesn't answer anything. We don't know what happened to the dog. I was really, I mean, the log line talks about the dog. The title of the script is called Dog. I want to know what happened to the dog. And this script sadly does not tell us what happened to the dog.
Yeah, it doesn't. Again, this is something that, at minimum, give us that. You know what I mean? They showed that the Oliver kid had a knife that was sort of similar. Later, I think you may have thought that the Joel guy that went hunting, he had something.
Yep.
Then it's sort of the wife is saying, hey, this guy that you keep hanging out with, you know that he has all these guns and all this equipment. Maybe it's him. I don't mind that there's a mystery. It would have been interesting if, let's say, after all of it, it turns out that it was the Tony guy that did all this bad stuff, and that the father was just too much already brainwashed by him or something.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And maybe the father has to fight to fight off the brainwashing and become
rise to the occasion. Yeah, that's the whole idea. Rise to the occasion. Yeah.
Right. And he wants to save his family at the end. Anything. I don't really care. It could have gone in a lot of different ways. It could be that the father is lost and he's brainwashed and weird and he
Hmm.
hurts his family, but at least make that the thing. Instead, it kind of wants to try everything and try nothing. And it doesn't, if it wanted to show the father going mad, it didn't do it well enough. It's just like, oh, he didn't return tonight. He went to drink. Oh, what's wrong? Oh, now, like, he's like, oh, can you lie for me? I need an alibi. Why do you need an alibi? I don't know.
I don't
And
know.
then
I
she's
didn't
like,
do anything to the kid. It's like, eh. And we
also,
don't know.
another
Yeah.
thing, all this ambiguous stuff. They're like, the son is like, oh, I need my pain medication. I'm like, oh, he's gonna take all these pain medicines on purpose
Hmm.
and unalive himself. And then at the end, all that medicine stuff doesn't even matter because they just found him that way with a knife thing. Also, very weird. I don't really even know. It's like maybe this Lucy lady was like, "Well, I'm keeping them all guessing. Who did kill the son? Who? Why did this happen? How did this happen?
Who
Was this
killed the
guy good? Was
dog?
this
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
bad?" But like I said, this is not one of those clever French movies that you could say is abstract and sort of like eclectic. This is a movie that is building itself up in a certain genre and style, and just to say at the end, "Hey, what if we did nothing and we just pulled the rug from under your feet and the movie ended?" And it's like, no, I actually don't like that. It's not that kind of movie. There are movies that have an ambiguous ending. This doesn't work here.
Yeah, ambiguous endings that work versus ambiguous endings that are just that ambiguous. I mean, I'll put it to you this way: we know where all the characters are. Well, we know where not all the characters. We know where enough of the characters are at the end for that we're shown. But the characters that we were invested in, the questions that were posed to us that we were hoping to get an answer for, were sadly not there. And this feels like a very poor way to be edgy. Um, and the other part too is like they the writer. I wish that the writer was better established earlier on the location and the concept in the neighborhood much more specifically. We don't need like a paragraph of it, but I'd like to know. Oh, we are. This setting is in a rural part of Australia, and so we know a little bit more of the context here. We're reading the lines with the Australian dialect in our heads and the connotations and the context of it all around us, and then when they start talking about legends and they start talking about like dark and disturbing areas, throw us in a little bit of that culture so that we can kind of really understand what resonates about this and maybe open up a little bit more of our suspension of disbelief into why this family that's moved into this neighborhood, that moved into this town, this rural village, could be easily seduced by the fear of 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 this neighborhood, and focusing it on this one kid Ollie is one cool aspect that you could do and play around with. And then, or maybe even using Ollie as a distraction because all the evil's coming from the guy preaching evil, who would be Tony, the next door neighbor who's got the wife who's always terrified to be around everybody but has always got a fake smile. Like, we have these pieces in play, and I mean, I just can't help but say it's just they feel so divorced from each other when there's lots of opportunities to have them complement each other in ways that don't betray, I think, the writer's goal of the story by keeping it a mystery, not letting you be able to guess the accurate resolution right away, because every time they get close enough, we get another new piece, another new story beat that just adds more questions but satisfies the previous one. So yeah, that's that's Dog so far. So Price, I'll throw it to you, sir. Would you give this script a green light or a pass?
I would give it a pass. I mean, what I would do is that if I was like Blumhouse,
Mm-hmm.
I would invite this Lucy Campbell for a meeting, and I'd tell her, "Listen, you had some interesting ideas here. Make this an actual screenplay. This is a rough first draft with some interesting ideas. You're not the worst writer when it comes to pacing and building out some interesting setups here. Make this focused." Make it a much more interesting. And I tell her, focus on the neighbor, on the relationship there, on the father kind of going off the deep end, and give an actual resolution at the end that feels like people saw the building up of a mystery, but some kind of payoff to it. Otherwise, it's not a movie. I would never greenlight it as is, but I would take the time to take a meeting with Lucy Campbell and tell her this could be a cheap $5 million Blumhouse movie if you just finish this screenplay in a more satisfying way and build a real story. You'll get like $5 million, and we'll bring somebody to be, some B actors to be in this movie, and with like $5 to $10 million budget, like a Blumhouse spooky thing, if she fixes the script, could, if nothing else, make its money back in the theater, and maybe then a few extra dollars in streaming. It could be that kind of movie. It's not spectacular in any case, but that's the most I would be willing to do for Lucy Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this: she does have a good lexicon, and she knows how to effectively describe scenes and define characters. But yeah, I would say like this needs some more focus, and yeah, I have to reluctantly pass on this as well. I think the premise is interesting; it definitely is compelling, but I think that needs to still be the spine of the story, and setting up a question like that in a story and not delivering on that question with an answer is a betrayal of the trust of the audience. And I understand doing that because you want to be like, that's real life, that's what's edgy, that's what we want to do. That mindset is someone that's either at the end of high school or first year in a film student who thinks that's a brand new idea to try to buck a trend. Because truth be told, you want to understand how stories work inside out and backwards before you start trying to throw in some new element in there to try and stand out. Because if you don't understand how to just tell a simple, great story as it is, there's no way you're going to succeed in trying to add in something new that you think is more edgy or more in line or on the pulse of society or what have you, because you don't understand what it is you're breaking. And the other part too is if you know how to break something and nobody can see that it's broken but it still works, that shows your understanding of how to of your craft. And so yeah, it's pretty sad because it has all this potential, but it just misses the mark by a country mile.
I'm thinking about it. I studied film, and once I was in a class where there was a teacher that really encouraged us to make movies that were sort of strange and abstract and things like that. So I've actually dabbled in this. And when I made like a movie that had something to do with that, if you looked at it today, you'd be looking at me and you'd say, what am I looking at? And I tell you, I was encouraged to create this kind of very surreal, abstract, strange, bizarre stuff. It doesn't have to have a fixed narrative. This is very symbolic and images and kind of out there. But that's what that movie, from the second that you start watching that movie, what it is. Mm-hmm. You never think to yourself, oh, I'm watching like a serious film here, and now it suddenly became surreal and abstract. And that's the difference between what the class and what I was studying and what this lady did with her screenplay. Because in this case, she's trying to build it in a way that seems reasonable, and the audience building expectations that they're going to get resolutions is because she wrote it in a style that conforms to the this type of genre or whatever you want to call it. It's just at the end she's like, well, what if in the last 10 minutes you find out that you just wasted your time, and I don't like wasting my time.
Yeah, because time is valuable. That's something I tell a lot of my fellow writers, even clients I have, is that whatever story you're telling, you believe that it's valuable, and you need to convey that belief, that the confidence you have, to people you've never met before, so that when they walk away, they don't feel like their time was wasted. And that's a really hard thing to do because you can't read the minds of billions of people on the planet. You just kind of have to figure out what has been successful, what worked before, why it worked that way, and see, does your story follow the same type of rules or perspective of how to achieve that while still being true to the new thing that you're coming out with. Like your teacher wanting you to express that and doing abstractly, but telling you guys like it's from beginning to beginning, middle, and end that it's going to be that way is actually a very smart thing to do. I have never seen a film student teacher that says, okay, do a short film, make the first act completely normal and stable, and then the second and third act make it as wonky, crazy, abstract as you want, because that would do nothing but actually just be a disservice to the students, because now they're not learning how to craft a narrative. They're learning how to, buck a trend for the sake of bucking a trend, and you'll never get anything good out of that. Possibly one exception to the rule, but 99.99999% of the time, you're going to get stuff that people are just going to walk away and think, I will remember that for all the wrong reasons. One, it wasted my time, and two, that I can't believe that person put that thing on film. And that seems like it might be a positive reputation at the start, but at the end of the movie, it's not going to do. It's not going to do you any good that's a career you want to pursue.
Yeah.
All right. So
I agree with everything, every word you just said. I agree with with all of it, and I think you and I are sort of on the same page. I feel like even right before the stream, we really understood each other, and I thought to myself that maybe the screenplay was doing something that I just didn't understand, and that's what I was asking before the stream. And you're like, "It's not you. It's not. It's the screenplay. It's not you."
yeah.
And that actually made me feel better, because I thought to myself, maybe if I read it a whole time again, I'll understand something that I didn't understand before. But as it is now, I don't think that's worth my time. You were talking about time. I don't think it's worth my time to read it again. I think, like I said, there were some interesting ideas here. This screenplay needs to be significantly overhauled, and then maybe like a Blumhouse for $5 million can make it.
Yeah. I would say this. It's first act. There's nothing wrong with it, really, because it's lots of good setup, all things needed to work well. But the second and third acts are just falling apart. And I think that's probably why it came in towards the bottom of the blacklist from last year. Although, personally, I probably wouldn't have even had it chart on the blacklist. It just wasn't.
No, it's not good enough to be on the list. But you know what? A lot of movies that we've read for your show for Scripts on Saturdays, I've been surprised a number of times that these were considered like top scripts, because
popular ones, yeah.
In so many occasions, it's just you and I sitting here, and we're already pointing out so many issues with these scripts and how they could improve. And in a few cases, we really went down to detail as to how they could fix some issues they had, and the screenplay already improved significantly. And the fact that nobody even notices this, and they have these on this list, it kind of explains why so many of the movies we've been seeing in recent years have been so poorly written. Because if this is the creme de la creme, then Hollywood's in trouble, I think.
Well, I mean, it's the odd part is that it's not the creme de la creme. It's just the most popular scripts that are circulating around, and again, because it's on the bottom of the list, we know for a fact that only 9 producers thought this was good. So I would say that's a pretty good ratio out of everybody else going out there. I mean, yeah.
At least even these, like, people that some of them are just silly and they invest money in crap, even they knew that this wasn't a good one. But first of all, I would think that this would be like one of the bottom 5. I don't know what's below this, but this to me seems like this would be one of the lowest performing screenplays out of all of them. Like I said, unless you meet with them. What'd you say?
It's definitely in the bottom 10, because this year's
sure.
Last year's Blacklist had over 80 scripts on it, which is pretty high, a pretty high number for a Blacklist. It's usually between like 60 and 70 screenplays. This one was more than others.
I just think this has to be bottom of the barrel for me, but that's my opinion. And
no, it's not a shocking opinion, because even those on Patreon who got a chance to check out the script and they voted on it, and it's 100% pass on them. Now, unfortunately, no one left a comment for us to explore as to why they thought it was a pass, but I'm pretty sure it would be very similar to the ideas we've already discussed on the show right now. And then, of course, heading over to the chat, we've got, of course, a donation from the Dead Man for 5, who said, "Just pretend that I gave you both poop emojis out of love. Good show tonight. Always a pleasure to have Price as a guest. I appreciate both of you." Well, thank you so much, the Dead Man. I appreciate that as well.
The Dead Man is awesome.
Yeah, oh, he is. He pops up all over the place, and I always appreciate him
I do
stopping
too.
by. It makes the show just a little bit better with Deadman and everybody else listening in live, knowing that they're there to participate. With us and listen to our thoughts and have their own thoughts on the stuff that we get to read. So, Price, before we call it a night, any last final thoughts about Dog?
I don't think there's much to say, and I'll tell you the truth. This was a difficult one, as far as us having a conversation a bit, because, like I said, when you're reading this whole thing, and at the end you reach that final portion of the screenplay, you realize what a time waster it was. It could have been that those 10 pages would have been brilliant, and maybe there would have been solutions that you think, oh, okay, I get it now. That's why all of this was happening. That's not how the screenplay plays out. So that's why at the end, like when I finished it and I understood that what a yanking your chain screenplay this is, I just felt very frustrated. And it's hard to even. There have been screenplays that we said, okay, the first act was good, the second act, there were some interesting ideas, but they didn't stick the landing at the end. This is a much bigger problem. It's not just sticking the landing. It's just that all this stuff is like sort of they're cooking a lot of different ingredients only to produce nothing at the end.
Yeah, kind of like a witch's stew, where they throw everything in there, and then when they pour it out into the glass, it's just steam. It's like, where did all the stuff
Something
they
like
put in
that.
there go? Yeah. Yep, I
This
felt
is like
that
when
too.
Gargamel used to have that stew, and he used to like that. That's exactly what it looks like. Yes.
All right. All right then, sir. So I want to thank you so much for hanging out tonight and sharing your thoughts on the script. Where can our wonderful audience listening in find you on the interwebs?
Oh, there's the YouTube channel Price of Reason. So if anybody wants to, they can find me there. That would be cool. And I'll try to throw in the link here.
Oh, we already got the links going in. You're all good.
Oh, okay, cool. So, I don't even need to do that. Yeah.
uh,
So cool. Yeah. Absolutely. And a pleasure being here as always. Like you've said, I don't even remember how many times I've been here, but it's always fun. And even if it's screenplays that we do like or don't like, it's always an interesting conversation that I have with you here. And you're the best person to talk to about this kind of stuff.
Oh, thank you. I really do appreciate that. I like talking about this because there's always something to learn, even from the good screenplays or the bad screenplays or anything in between. There's always something to learn out of that can help us appreciate the people that succeed at it, and also want the people that kind of stumble or fail to do better. And that's part of what this show is about, and to show you, everyone out there listening, that heck, even though you get a stinker every once in a while, when you get a good one, it's good. And we've had, for this year alone, we've had almost 50% of the scripts we reviewed be pretty good, that we liked. So I would say that's a good average to have, better than what you'd normally expect from this one.
Yep.
All right, guys. So, Price, thank you again so much for joining me tonight. Everyone out there listening live, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And for those listening on the replay, thank you so much for all your support. Again, guys, if you want to find out the type of scripts we'll be reviewing every following Saturday, please feel free to sign up for the Patreon. It does come with a one free week subscription, where you get access to all of my articles, my musings, my posts, my notes and tricks and tips and instructions and guidance on how to write an effective story and screenplay. And if you're so inclined to hang on as members, much appreciated, but of course not required. And if you are already a Patreon, please don't hesitate to comment on the post, especially when we announce what script we'll be discussing, because we want to get you guys involved in that as well. With that being said, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And remember, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.